was the inspiration behind you starting your own podcast?
I think I've always been like someone that loved podcasts. I think I got introduced to podcasts, I think 2018. And since then, that's what I used to listen to when I was commuting. Is what I would listen to during like my corporate job. And I wouldn't really listen to music, I would listen to podcasts. And
Mm.
I just love the fact that you were able to just hear people's stories. And the fact that people were just so open and vulnerable to chat to this person about like their story. And that was really inspiring. But I think for me, it was like, there were certain podcasts that you use for different things, and I think there was definitely some for mindset. But I was like, wait, I want to see if there's any South Asian ones, and at the time there were a few, a lot of them from America, but I didn't really find like a British South Asian podcaster because I feel as though like yes, we're all South Asian, even from a different diaspora, but I do feel like sometimes the British diaspora and the American diaspora are the same. So there was American South Asian podcast that I can like listen to, and I was like, yes, I get it, but I kind of don't get it because I can't relate to like high
Yeah.
school references and that because I didn't grow up like that, right? So it
Yeah.
was a bit like, okay, cool, but like where's the British South Asian person? And I'm not saying there should be one, but at the time I just couldn't find any back in like 2018,
Mm.
2019. So that's when that idea kind of sparked, and I was kind of like going through a time in my life where I just felt really lonely, and I was like, well, let me go to podcasting because podcasts are people that share their stories, and hopefully there's someone out there that's like me who gets what I'm going through.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I couldn't find anybody. So I was like, wait, let me just try and make my own because definitely do have such a creative side to me. And I was like, okay, let me just do this. But it took me a good like 8 months to like get the courage to even record my trailer. I did so much planning. I actually made a rule that I'm going to do everything myself. So my logo, the marketing, like even the jingles, everything, learning to edit. I did that all myself. And then I think lockdown was basically when I was like, okay, I can't procrastinate anymore. Like I have to I actually have the time, because I think before I was very much like, I don't have the time to do it. I don't have the time to
Yeah.
do it. And now I think with lockdown, I had the time to do it. Like I couldn't put it off any longer.
Mm.
So then I was like, okay, cool, let's just do it. And I just had an effort moment and I was like, let's just do it. And the response has been amazing. It's been so brilliant. Like we're on season 2 right now, and like I wasn't genuinely expecting it to grow as quickly as it has, but it's definitely been a journey. And do you know what? Yeah, I'm actually so glad I did it. Like, not gonna lie, I'm so
Yeah.
happy I did it.
I'm glad you did it too, because I think, as you said, like I have friends from America as well, and even though there's certain things we can speak about, obviously being Indian like binds us, but there is differences between being an American Indian and being a British Indian, and I think
Yeah.
you're so right as well. Like we need to have more representation. So why is that so important to you?
I feel like growing up I didn't have any representation.
Mm.
I think growing up in the noughties, if I could be completely honest, the only representation I had was Bend It Like Beckham. And
Yeah.
that was the one movie. And that's why it, by far, is my favourite film, like to this
Yeah.
day. Because I was like, they're a Sikh Punjabi family in London. Like, that's me. And do you know what
That's
I
so
mean?
true.
But
That's so true.
yeah. And I think like on mainstream TV, like there wasn't. I think a lot of times when you're growing up, a lot of people watch soaps and stuff like that. And I think there was always a South Asian family in, like, for example, EastEnders or whatnot. But they weren't, I think at the time they just classed all South Asian people in that one box and be like, oh, like, okay, South Asian tick. When I was like, there's so many different aspects of being South Asian. South Asian people are not just Indian, or they're not just
Mm.
Pakistani people. There's so many different religions. They're not just Hindu. There's Sikh people, there's Jain people, there's Muslim people. There's so many different people. And I think then representation really wasn't a topic that people spoke about, and
Mm.
because we were kind of seen as a minority. And I think for me growing up, I kind of turned to YouTube actually. So because that's where I related more, and that's
Mm.
where I saw my representation. So I was a massive fan of like Lily Singh and Just Rain and all of those like South Asian comedians on YouTube, because I was like, this is the representation I want. I want to laugh at someone that's able to relate at what my parents do, because my parents do
Yeah.
exactly the same thing. So I didn't really, so I feel like a lot of times I didn't watch TV that much, but I feel like I don't know if every family does this, and I'm so interested to see if people do this. Is the fact that, like, you know, when you see someone that's South Asian, you just get so excited.
Oh
Like
my!
if
Oh,
I was
literally.
watching TV I saw another person with a bug. I was like, oh my god, there's a bug person. Like, there's a Sikh person. I don't know why we did it, but we all did it.
We do all the time, like when my mom's in the kitchen and stuff, and there's an advert and there's an Asian person, I'll be like, Indian, Indian. Like, mom, look, Indian. Like, or someone that even just looks like us. Like, it could be from it could be like, because East is East came out, or was the film when I was quite young, and it might have been a different generation to you. And even though it wasn't about Indians, it was about a Muslim family. But even then, I felt like represented. I was like, oh wow, I'm on stage. Like, even when I see Riz Ahmed and stuff, I'm like, wow, there's someone that looks like me, who's there. And it's, as you said, it's that feeling of belonging, that feeling that you're not just here as a guest, like you're here because you're here, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also what you said about being seen, and I'm so glad that representation now is a topic that people are taking seriously, and I think it's starting, but there's still such a long way to go. That the fact that there's now like on Netflix sitcoms about South Asian families, and like there's now, for example, like I would use Lily Singh again as an example of someone that has a late night TV show. Like that kind of representation is great, but I also feel like there's so much more that still needs to be done. And I feel like in the podcast space, especially, there isn't that many South Asian podcasts, unfortunately. And do you know what's really nice is the fact that people are starting them. And it's like, people will message me, I would love to start my own podcast. I'm like, girl, please do it, because we need representation. And I think a lot of times when it comes to representation as a minority, I think a lot of it also is tokenism, in the sense that you're like, oh, this is one South Asian person, they're going to represent everyone on the podcast space. Or there's one South Asian person, they're going to represent everyone on the YouTube space. And it's not like that. Because like, just because you're South Asian doesn't mean that you're the same as the next South Asian person. Like, we're all so different. It's just a bit annoying when people just put you in a box, kind of thing. And that's kind of why I wanted to use my platform to showcase so many people, other people's stories, because I think the way we learn, and I think for me especially, the way I learn is through storytelling. I love hearing people's stories. I love what they go through. It's the reason I love movies and TV shows. It's like, it's that whole art of storytelling and the whole art to relating to someone, but if not relating, but understanding what they went through
100%.
as well, and just learning off them. I think that's amazing.